is going on, everybody, and welcome back to Bourbon of the Week. My name's Chris. I'm going to be your host for today, and today we have something called 15 Stars Fine Aged Bourbon. This is the Platinum. This, I believe, is batch number 2. The only reason I know that is because somebody actually did a tasting of this, and they told me that 208 out of 1,650 bottles is less bottles than they had in batch number 1. So we're going to get into all that and more. I will tell you, we're going to talk about this stopper during the Bourbon Bomb of the Week, and this is going to bring up a question of what's your budget when it comes to bourbon? What's the most that you would pay for a bottle of whiskey in general? It's a very tough question to ask, especially because of all these special releases coming out and bottles like this that have some great age statements on them. But everybody knows, before we get into all of that, time for the traditional sip. Cheers, y'all. I like this a lot. So if this is your first time tuning into the channel, what we do here is we put these bottles through the gauntlet: price, taste, drinkability. The best thing about this particular bottle right here is it does tell us a lot of information right on the bottle. This says it's a marriage of fine aged bourbons, 18, 15, and 10 years old. Now again, with a little bit of inside information, I do believe there's actually 19-year-old whiskey in this instead of the 18. I think it's 19, 15, 10 when it comes to the age statement on this. I don't know if there's any whiskey lower than 10 years old, but again, I'm assuming that there's not. I think it's 19, 15, and 10 with no younger stuff, but there's no age statement that says this is at least 10 years old, so take that with a grain of salt. It also says that it's bottled in Kentucky, distilled in Kentucky, Indiana, and Tennessee. Now, if we think about that, Indiana is most likely MGP. Tennessee, I believe we know, is Dickel. I'm not 100% on that because it doesn't tell us, but I believe that's the older stuff coming out of this is Dickel. Then, of course, we have Kentucky, which could be a variety of things, but again, just a little bit of digging makes me believe it's either Heaven Hill or Jim Beam. And the last thing we know about this bottle is it's coming in at 98 proof, which will lead us right into drinkability on this. How well does this sip at 98 proof? We're not expecting anything too crazy, but let's take another sip and find out. I mean, for 98 proof, this drink's phenomenal. First of all, the age statement on this is really going to help mellow out a lot of that ethanol flavors. It's going to evaporate a lot of those ethanols. I don't know what this would come out at cash strength. Again, they're blending 3 different whiskeys, so maybe the 10-year-old is a little bit higher proof than the 18, or in this case, 19-year-old. But this one right here just is blended so well. That age statement on here really pulls out a lot of that ethanol, and I really like this a lot. At 98 proof, you're not expecting a big kick, but sometimes you still get it. I'm glad I don't get it on this glass. This is where things get a little bit tough because you don't have a lot of wiggle room down, right? We always give it a 7.0 if it drinks right at its proof, but at 98 proof, I mean, the lowest it can be is 80 proof, right? So if you go up, if it's 136, 140 proof hazmat, you can move 40 proof points up, but you can't move down too much. If I were to blind this, though, I would still put this at like 90 proof, I think. I think it's that good. And I also feel like the move down is much more important than the move up. So if I'm telling you that this drinks at 130 proof and it's 125 proof, you're like, that makes sense. But if it's 130 proof and it's drinking at 115 proof, you're like, damn, that sip's very easy. So 8 proof points down seems like a substantial jump to me. So I'm going to give this a pretty good score when it comes to drinkability. You know the rules. One more sip. I'm going to say like 8.13. I think it deserves to be up there. It's hard to get much higher than that just because, again, it's only 98 proof, so you're not expecting a big ethanol kick. But I think going into the summertime, this is something that I could truly see myself sipping more often than not, just because you don't want to be sipping that 120, 130 proof when it's 90 degrees out like it almost was here today in Pennsylvania. So 8.13 seems like a fair spot for it. Let's get into taste next. I don't think I mentioned this yet or not, but 15 Stars actually sent me this bottle, which is an awesome gesture. They didn't even say, hey, can you review this or anything like that. They were just like, hey, here's a good bottle of whiskey if you want to tell your friends about it, and I'm telling you guys about it. This, when it comes to taste, though, is absolutely phenomenal. I think it's where it shines on this bottle, because when we get a price on this next, you might think about it before pulling the trigger. Listen, whatever they're doing with the blending process when it comes to this particular glass is absolutely perfect. I don't love, and I was going to talk about this during drinkability, I don't love an older age statement. I haven't found an 18-year-old whiskey that I've truly loved, but the blending process between that 18, or in this case, 19, 15, and 10-year-old whiskey is perfect for my particular palate. Remember, for me, myself, and I can only give you my particular palate when it comes to a tasting profile. But what they do here gives me that roller coaster ride that I talk about all the time. Let's tell you about the actual tasting notes, though, that I get on this, because they are just so phenomenal. And again, the way that they're blended gives me everything that I'm looking for in a glass of whiskey. Let's start at the beginning of the glass and get the obvious out of the way. The sweetness on this is just out of this world phenomenal. I get a vanilla bomb on this. I get a caramel. It's not much of a burnt caramel. It's more of that candied caramel. There's a lot of candied sweetness on this, which I absolutely love, like some bakery, confectionery, sugar type of sweetness on this. Then you move right into my favorite flavor profile of all time, honey. I don't want it honey finished, right? I don't like a honey finish, but if you can get some honey on this, and I don't know how they do it, but there's a honey flavor profile on this that gives it a viscosity and a mouthfeel that I absolutely love. Stop that right there and you move right into the mid palate here, which is all of the spices that I absolutely love. You get a little bit of that allspice, that cinnamon, but like that cinnamon spice, that almost big red flavor when it comes to this, and I love that. That spiciness with that sweetness makes the beginning and the middle of this glass absolutely phenomenal, and we haven't even gotten into the finish yet. The finish on this glass is where you find all of the age on this, right? You get that oak, you get that leather, you get a little bit of smokiness on this. But again, the way that it's blended, it doesn't ever hit you, right? You don't run into that. You kind of just like fall into the finish of this glass and then it lingers on forever. And I love that. The oak on the end of this glass isn't overwhelming. The leather is just like you're searching for it and you find it and you're like, there it is. I'm glad it's there. A little bit of tannins, a little bit of dryness on the tongue, but that's about it. I was expecting a lot more because of the age on this, but this glass overall, phenomenal when it comes to my particular palate on what I'm looking for with taste. That honey with that big red flavor is just like right in the middle of the palate. They kind of like meet each other and they're like almost fighting for the next sip. Like, what do you want to taste next? And you're like, give me more honey, give me more big red. I love this glass right here. I can't remember if we gave one particular bottle a 9 when it came to taste. I'll have to look back and think about that. But this glass, I think this glass might be in the 9s. When it comes to taste, this is definitely going to be in the 9s. We still got to talk about price, which is where you're going to be like, I don't know if that's right. But when it comes to taste, this is going to be in the 9s. I don't even need another sip. I'm going to go right over a 9 though, right? Because it's still got to be hard to be a 9. 9.01 is where we're going to put this when it comes to taste. This is almost perfect when it comes to the flavor profile. Obviously, there's always room for improvement. And last but not least, I hate to tell you this, but the price on this bottle right here is $280 MSRP, and that's where I have a question for you guys. What's the max that you're spending on a bottle of whiskey? Everybody has a budget. What's your budget? What's the max that you're spending? Or what's the most that you've ever spent? What's the most that you spent that you've been disappointed on? Because I bought Elijah Craig 18 year and I spent $200 on that here in Pennsylvania and I was just flat out disappointed. So it becomes tough. I feel like $200 is where I'm at, is like, if it's over $200, I have to either try it. Somebody either that I respect or trust has to tell me how good it actually is. But $280, this is a tough ask for any particular bottle of whiskey. But let's talk about what we're at least getting for this one. Listen, $280 definitely bothers me. It's definitely above what I would pay for this particular bottle of whiskey, but the question becomes, what are you actually getting? So, Dickel 18 year is probably in this, or in this particular case, 19 year. We've got something, either Heaven Hill or Jim Beam, coming in probably at that 15 year, and then MGP at 10, or scratch that, reverse it. I'm not quite sure yet, but I will say, at least they're giving me something that's a little bit worth my while, right? I understand age equals time, time equals money. They're obviously buying these barrels from somebody else. It's not like MGP is putting their particular 15-year release out. This is somebody who's buying barrels from somebody else, bottling it, blending it. The blending process is perfect. The drinkability is fantastic. The taste is good. So I can't hate it too much. I understand there's costs involved in this, but I still got to tell you, I don't know what their cost going into it is. That's another tough thing. If they straight out came out and told me, like, listen, this bottle cost us $230. We're selling it for $280. We're making $50 a bottle. I'd be like, cool. That makes sense to me. I don't think it costs them that much. I don't know how much it costs them, but I don't think it costs them that much. So the question becomes, what would I pay for it, and what score do we give it for $280 MSRP? Let's finish our glass. The person who gave me some insider information on this, who will remain anonymous, told me they would pay about $150 for this bottle. Now, I will say, I think I'm a little bit above that. I think I'm at that $200 mark. Makes sense to me on this bottle. Again, 19, 15, 10-year stuff. You got Dickel. You got a little bit of MGP. You got probably Heaven Hill or Jim Beam. I don't hate it. I love MGP, by the way. I just got back from Indianapolis, and we did a 70-bottle hangout. And like 27 of them were MGP, and I think I drank all 27 of them, and they were all phenomenal. I love MGP. I'm not a hater on MGP. I just gotta tell you, $280 is a lot. I'm gonna take one more sip, we'll give it a score, then we'll go over to our Bourbon Bomb of the Week and talk about this topper, which is an amazing part of this bottle. I said one more sip like there was anything left. I gotta tell you, I would pay 200. It's 280. I got to go a little bit lower than 7 on this, obviously. We're going to go like a 5.43 when it comes to price on this. I just don't think it deserves to be $280. Again, not knowing what their cost is. But listen, I would pour up another glass, but this is something I do on my Patreon. It's actually something new that I've added. But if I get free bottles of whiskey from the distillery, I want everybody to have an opportunity to try it. My higher tier patrons get it for free. My lower tier patrons can pay for shipping. So if you're interested, check out the Patreon page. That link in the description below. Let's get into our bourbon bomb of the week. Cheers, y'all. Now listen, whenever I get a bottle of whiskey, the first thing I do is go over everything on the bottle. And the one thing that confused me about this particular bottle is it said a blend of straight bourbon whiskeys from America's First West. And I was like, is this from Cali? Is this aging somewhere that I don't know about? Is this distilled somewhere or bottled somewhere out west? And I just couldn't put it together until finally it came to me, and reading a little bit on the website, this America's First West is talking about Kentucky as the 15th state, hence the 15 stars. Now, if you didn't already know this, in 1792, Kentucky was added to the United States of America, and on the second flag that they made in 1795, I believe it says 1795 here. If not, it definitely does on the stopper. It does. The spirit of 1795, as well as on the stopper, it says 1795. The stopper is a picture of the coin that represented the 15th state. It has 15 stars. It says 15 stars. It has the eagle. Again, the coin had the 1795 representing the 15 stars and stripe from the second flag, which was, obviously, talking about Kentucky, America's First West. I love when bottles do stuff like this. Again, I think it adds to the value. This topper right here is something that I will keep. I like to keep a lot of stoppers just in case other ones break, but this one in particular is something that I really enjoy. Again, this is dense, it's heavy, the stopper is very nice, and it goes along with the bottle perfectly. A great bottle, a great topper, everything about this, the first of the West, we've got 15 stars. Unfortunately for me, it didn't get 15 stars. It got 7.52. Now, considering how bad of a score I gave it when it came to price at $280, that's still a very good spot for this. Again, if you can try this before you buy this and you like it as much as I do, maybe you're going to front out that $280. I will keep an eye on this going forward, and maybe, just maybe if I see it on the shelf, I will pick it up. But hey, if you learned anything today or enjoy the content, make sure you click that like and subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate it. Check us out on Instagram at Bourbon of the Week. Go click that follow button over there. Check out our Patreon page, which I already mentioned, our Discord, that link in the description below. Come chat with us 24/7. Please don't drink and drive. Always drink responsibly. Stay healthy, stay happy, and stay west of the Mississippi, I suppose. Cheers, y'all.